Some inherit fortunes, others inherit curses. Tonight, we follow the story of Claire, a woman who receives an heirloom far more dangerous than it appears. An ancient necklace, shimmering with crimson light, promising beauty and immortality, but demanding a price that cannot be measured in gold. Join me as we step into a world where every heartbeat can be stolen, and where eternity may be the cruelest trap of all. This is the cursed necklace. The rain fell in steady, mournful sheets over the old churchyard, soaking the black umbrellas gathered among the headstones. Claire stood still at the edge of the grave, her eyes fixed on the mahogany coffin as it was lowered into the earth. Her great-aunt Margaret had been the only family she had left, a stern but eccentric woman who had raised her after her parents' death. The funeral was small, a few distant relatives, neighbors from the crumbling countryside estate, and the local priest were the only witnesses to the final farewell. The air smelled of damp soil and lilies, but underneath it, Claire swore she could catch the faintest trace of Lavender Margaret's favorite perfume lingering like a ghost. When the service ended, most guests drifted toward their cars. Claire lingered, letting the others leave first. She traced her fingers over the carved headstone, feeling the chill of wet stone beneath her skin. Miss Claire, the voice belonged to Mr. Davenport, Margaret's longtime solicitor. His thin frame seemed even more skeletal under his black overcoat. "There's something your great-aunt wanted you to have. She left it in my care with specific instructions." From the deep pocket of his coat, he withdrew a small, worn velvet box. Its dark red surface was frayed at the corners, and a gold clasp kept it tightly shut. Claire hesitated before taking it. She said Davenport continued, "that it has been in your family for generations, and now it belongs to you." She also said, his voice faltered slightly, "never to remove it once you put it on." Claire frowned. "Why? What is it?" He gave a tight, unreadable smile. "Best you decide for yourself. Your aunt was peculiar about some matters. I'm merely the messenger." Back at her apartment, later that night, the storm outside rattled the windows. Claire sat on her couch, the velvet box before her like a dare. Finally, with a deep breath, she flipped open the clasp inside. Resting on a bed of faded silk lay a necklace, unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its chain was made of an unfamiliar dark metal, smooth and cold to the touch, and at its center hung an oval pendant of deep crimson stone, swirling faintly as if it held liquid light within. For reasons she couldn't explain, her pulse quickened. The pendant seemed to hum softly in her palm, resonating with her heartbeat. And as lightning flashed across the sky, she thought she saw something, a shadow, or perhaps a flicker of movement inside the red stone itself. Claire shivered, but could not look away there. Rain outside grew heavier. Somewhere deep in her mind, a thought surfaced unbidden. Put it on. The storm had swallowed the night sky, each thunderclap rattling the apartment's thin walls. Claire sat in silence, the necklace cradled in her hand. The more she stared at it, the more impossible it felt to simply close the box and walk away. Her great-aunt's words, through the solicitor, echoed faintly in her mind, "Never remove it once you put it on." It was an odd warning. Was it sentimentality, superstition, or something darker? The pendant's crimson glow seemed to deepen as she turned it under the lamp. And then, almost without realizing it, she unclasped the chain and draped it around her neck. The instant the pendant touched her skin, a cold shock rippled down her spine. She gasped, clutching at the metal. But the sensation quickly shifted. Heat spread from her throat into her chest, curling through her veins like liquid fire. It wasn't painful, it was exhilarating. The storm outside faded into the background. Every detail of her small apartment became sharp, vivid, the ticking clock, the faint scent of coffee from hours ago, even the soft hum of the refrigerator. She felt alive in a way she never had before, her senses dialed far beyond their limits. She caught her reflection in the darkened window and paused. Her eyes, the brown was richer, warmer, almost glowing. Her skin seemed smoother, subtly luminous, as if she'd stepped out of a portrait. Then the whisper came. It wasn't in the room, it was inside her head. A voice, smooth and low, threading its way through her thoughts. "You will never feel pain again, Claire." Froze. She spun toward the door, the couch, the shadows, nothing. Her heart pounded, but she didn't remove the necklace. Another thought drifted into her mind. But it didn't feel like her own time will be yours. Sudden, dizzying fatigue washed over her. She collapsed onto the bed without even changing her clothes. The pendant rested heavy on her chest, its warmth pulsing like a second heartbeat outside. The rain slowed to a mist. Lightning briefly illuminated her sleeping form, and in that flash, the red stones seemed to flicker, revealing, just for a breath, the faint outline of a human face within sunlight spilled across Claire's bed, sharp and golden. She opened her eyes slowly, expecting the groggy heaviness of another sleepless night. But instead she felt weightless. Her mind was clear, her body humming with energy. She sat up and realized, with a jolt, that she'd slept in the same clothes she wore yesterday, yet there wasn't a single crease, wrinkle, or ache in her muscles. She padded barefoot into the bathroom and flicked on the light. The sight staring back at her in the mirror made her freeze. Her skin looked flawless, not just good skin, but impossibly smooth, like the airbrushed faces of magazine covers. The faint laugh lines around her mouth, the tiny scar on her chin she'd had since childhood gone. Her hair, though she hadn't washed it in 2 days, fell in perfect, glossy waves over her shoulders, and her eyes, rich amber now, not brown, glimmered faintly in the light, as if something behind them was watching back. She touched the pendant, resting against her collarbone. The crimson stone pulsed faintly, like it was breathing in sync with her. Then she noticed something stranger. The potted orchid on the bathroom shelf, which had been wilting for months despite her best efforts, now bloomed in perfect health. Its petals were vibrant, its leaves a deep, unblemished green. Her phone buzzed on the counter, snapping her out of her trance. It was a text from Emily, her co-worker. "Hugh, okay. Heard about the accident on 5th Street last night. Crazy stuff." Claire frowned. She hadn't heard any news. She tapped on the link Emily sent. The article headline read: "1 dead. 1 miraculously unharmed in late-night collision." Her stomach tightened as she read the details. The survivor, a woman about her age, had been standing exactly where Claire usually waited for the bus after work. But she'd been home early yesterday because of the storm. Her pulse quickened. Another thought crept into her head, unbidden, but clear: the necklace protects its own. She stepped back from the mirror, her fingers curling round the pendant. A flicker of unease crept into the edges of her mind, but so did something else. Curiosity. The day unfolded like a dream Claire couldn't wake from and didn't want to. She walked to work under a cloudless sky, but the city looked sharper, more vibrant than she'd ever seen it. Faces in the crowd were distinct, every voice a clear thread in the tapestry of street noise. She noticed things she'd never paid attention to before: the way sunlight reflected off wet pavement in fractured rainbows, the flutter of a pigeon's wings in perfect slow motion. At the office, heads turned as she entered. It wasn't her imagination, people were staring. Emily, normally quick with a joke, blinked at her for a long moment before saying, "Wow, you look amazing. Did you do something different?" Claire only smiled. She didn't need to say anything. The truth felt like her secret by lunchtime. She began to suspect something impossible. She hadn't eaten breakfast, yet she wasn't hungry. She'd climbed 3 flights of stairs without feeling winded. Her smartwatch showed her resting heart rate at an unnaturally steady 50 beats per minute. After work, curiosity gnawed at her. She decided to test the necklace. She walked into a busy intersection as the pedestrian light turned red, just as a delivery van came speeding around the corner. The driver honked, brakes, screaming, but time seemed to slow. The air thickened. She stepped forward calmly, crossing inches from the bumper. The van's side mirror missed her elbow by a breath, but her heartbeat never changed. The driver leaned out the window, shouting, "Are you insane?" Claire just kept walking. She wasn't reckless. She knew she'd be fine that night, in her apartment. She examined herself again in the mirror. Not a single line, blemish, or mark marred her skin. The faint muscle aches she used to get after long workdays had vanished. She touched the crimson pendant and felt its steady warmth seep into her bones, but when she turned away from the mirror, she froze. Her reflection didn't for a heartbeat too long. The reflection stood still, its eyes fixed on hers, its lips just beginning to curve into a smile that she hadn't made. Then it moved in sync again, as if nothing had happened. Claire's hand hovered over the clasp at her neck, but the solicitor's warning, "Never remove it once you put it on," stopped her cold. She turned out the light and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. In the dark, she could feel the pendant's faint pulse, like it was waiting the next morning. Claire's mind was still replaying the moment her reflection had moved on its own. She told herself it was fatigue, a trick of the light, but the thought clung to her like cobwebs at work. She found herself distracted, scrolling through her phone between tasks. She typed "antique necklace, dark metal crimson stone" into the search bar. Thousands of results flooded in, mostly jewelry listings and fictional stories, but buried on the 3rd page was something that made her pulse quicken. It was an image from an archived museum catalogue. A grainy black and white photograph showed a necklace almost identical to hers. The caption, reading "Amulet of Caldevra, origin unknown, believed lost in fire. 1923, the description beneath it was brief, but unsettling, said to grant unnaturally long life to its wearer. Numerous accounts linked the amulet to unexplained deaths and disappearances in its vicinity. Artifact vanished after the destruction of the Vargrave estate, along with its last known owner, Lady Eleanor Vargrave. Claire leaned back in her chair, the office chatter fading into a dull hum. She'd never heard of the Vargrave estate. She copied the name and ran another search newspaper. Scans appeared, yellowed headlines, old ink. One in particular caught her breath. Found dead in locked room. Necklace missing. The Vargrave Chronicle. 1923. The article described a young noblewoman discovered lifeless, her skin untouched by decay despite the fire that consumed the rest of the estate. Witnesses claimed her expression was smiling. No valuables were recovered except for a strange red pendant last seen on her. Claire shut her laptop, her stomach knotting. That evening, she called Mr. Davenport, the solicitor. "You gave me this necklace," she said without preamble. "What do you know about it?" There was a pause. Then his voice, carefully measured, "Only that your great-aunt insisted it be passed to you. She inherited it herself from her own grandmother, and she wore it for decades." Claire swallowed. Did she ever look different? Younger? Another pause. Margaret never changed much, he said slowly, but she outlived everyone she knew. After the call ended, Claire stood before her bathroom mirror again, the pendant heavy and warm against her skin this time. She didn't look away, and just before the light above the mirror flickered and went out, she saw the faint outline of a woman, tall, elegant, her hair pinned in an old-fashioned style, standing behind her, smiling in that same strange way described in the newspaper that night. Claire left every light on in her apartment. It didn't help. The shadows seemed thicker than usual, pooling in the corners like ink, and she swore she caught movement in her peripheral vision just quick enough to make her heart race. But gone. When she turned her head, she tried to distract herself, putting on the TV and curling up with a blanket. But sometime past midnight, as she began drifting toward sleep, she heard it, a whisper, faint, deliberate. She jolted upright, scanning the room. The voice had no direction, it was inside her head. Yet it didn't sound like her own thoughts. You are safe, you are chosen, nothing can harm you. Her fingers instinctively brushed the necklace. The stone was warmer than usual, almost hot, its pulse quickening in sync with the words. She swallowed. "What do you want from me?" she whispered aloud. A pause, then to keep you, to guide you, to help. You take what is yours. The warmth spread from the pendant into her chest, and suddenly a flood of memories and images flashed behind her eyes, scenes that weren't hers. A woman, in Victorian dress, smiling as men bowed to her. A soldier on a battlefield, untouched by bullets. A child standing in the middle of a burning building, unharmed, laughing. The images vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of power. It wasn't just protection, it was dominance. Invincibility. Claire's breathing slowed, her earlier fear slipping into something more dangerous, a craving. "Show me," she whispered. The crimson stone pulsed once, like a heartbeat. She woke the next morning with a strange clarity. The whispers hadn't stopped. They'd simply blended with her own thoughts, making it hard to tell where she ended and the voice began. At work, she caught herself saying things she wouldn't normally say, sharper, more manipulative. People listened. People agreed. By evening, she realized she'd gotten through an entire day without feeling a single pang of hunger, thirst, or fatigue. She wasn't sure if she'd blinked as often as she should have, and that night, when she stood before the mirror again, her reflection's lips moved just a fraction before hers, speaking the same words in perfect unison. "Forever is yours, Claire, if you let me." In Claire hadn't visited her best friend, Emily, in over a week. They used to meet almost every other day for coffee or late-night wine, but now Claire found excuses to avoid her. The whispers told her she didn't need anyone, that attachments only made her weak. Still, guilt gnawed at her, so she sent Emily a text. "Dinner. My treat. 7 p.m. at Lavaine's." Emily replied within minutes. "Yes. Been missing you." That evening Claire arrived early, her necklace gleaming under the restaurant's warm lights. Heads turned as she walked in. The Maître d' smiled too broadly, leading her to the best table without hesitation. When Emily arrived, her hug lingered longer than usual. "You look incredible," Emily said, sitting down. "Seriously, what's your secret? You haven't aged a day since I met you." Claire only smiled, the pendant warm against her skin. "Just taking care of myself." The meal was easy at first, filled with laughter and updates. But halfway through dessert, Emily's smile faltered. She pressed a hand to her chest. "You okay?" Claire asked. Emily shook her head slightly, her breathing quickening. I feel her words broke off into a cough. Then another. Her fork clattered to the floor. Panic rippled through the restaurant. Claire leapt to her side, calling for help. Within seconds, a server was dialing emergency services. Emily's face paled, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Claire," she gasped. "It hurts." Claire gripped her hand tightly. "Stay with me. Help is coming." But as she held Emily's hand, Claire felt it a faint pull, like a thread being drawn out of her friend and into the stone at her throat. The pendant's warmth spiked, almost burning her skin. "No," Claire whispered, trying to pull her hand away, but Emily's grip tightened involuntarily before going limp. The paramedics arrived moments later, but it was too late. They said later it was a sudden heart attack. No history, no warning signs. Just gone that night. Claire sat alone in her apartment, staring at the necklace in the mirror. The stone glowed brighter than she'd ever seen it. She realized then, with sick certainty, that it didn't just grant life, it took a hand Emily had. Been the days after Emily's death blurred together. Claire told the police everything she was supposed to, how they'd been eating dessert, how Emily suddenly clutched her chest, how it all happened so fast. She didn't mention the burning warmth of the pendant or the strange pull she'd felt. She barely left her apartment. Not because she was grieving, though a part of her was, but because she was terrified of what the necklace might do again, or worse, what it might make her want. The whispers came more often now, sliding into her thoughts without warning. "You are eternal." She was not why cling to those who will only leave you. Sometimes they were soothing, coaxing her to see the bigger picture. Other times they were sharp, impatient. "You feel it, don't you? The emptiness, the cold. Feed me." She tried to ignore it, but the longer she resisted, the more she noticed some own body weakening. Her once glowing skin dulled slightly. Her limbs ached with a fatigue she hadn't felt since before wearing the necklace. The whispers grew urgent. "It is not a curse, it is a hunger. And you must eat one night." Walking home from the corner store, she saw a man in the alley beside her building. He was older, slumped against the wall, muttering to himself. His jacket was torn, his face unshaven. He looked up as she passed. "Spare change." He rasped she should have kept walking, but her steps slowed, and the pendant warmed against her chest. The whispers curled in her mind like smoke. One touch, one breath. "You will be whole." Again her heart pounded not with fear, but with something darker. She knelt beside him, pretending to reach for her wallet. Her hand brushed his, and instantly the warmth surged, racing from the pendant through her veins. The man gasped, his eyes going wide before they dulled. His chest stopped. Rising, Claire staggered back, her breathing ragged. She stared at her hands, then at the glowing pendant. She felt alive again, radiant, untouchable, but the pit in her stomach only deepened. She had fed it, and she knew she would have to again. Claire stopped counting the days. She told herself she was being careful, that she only fed the necklace when absolutely necessary. But the line between need and want was blurring fast. The hunger always began the same way, a faint, gnawing ache. In her chest, the pendant's glow dimming to a sullen ember. Then came the whispers, weaving into her thoughts like threads she couldn't pull loose. "You are fading, feed me. One more, and you will be strong again." Each time, she resisted. Her reflection grew a little less perfect, shadows under her eyes, a dullness in her hair, a faint tremor in her hands. But one touch of life, stolen in a heartbeat, and she was whole again. Her methods became almost subconscious. A helpful hand to a stranger crossing the street. A casual brush of fingers in a crowded train. She never left marks. No one suspected her, but she began to notice something horrifying. Her empathy was slipping away. When she read news articles about sudden deaths, she didn't feel sadness anymore, just calculation. How long before she needed her next meal? One night, she woke at 3 a.m. to find herself standing in the hallway outside her apartment. Barefoot, the necklace hot against her skin. Her hands were trembling, her mind fogged. She didn't remember getting up, and yet she could smell something. Not food, not perfume. Something richer, vital. She followed it to the door of an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Turner. The whispers were almost frantic now. She has lived long enough. Take what she leaves behind. Claire's hand was already on the doorknob before she realized she was moving. She yanked her hand back like she'd touched fire, stumbling into her own apartment and slamming the door shut. She slid down the wall, clutching the pendant. "No," she hissed. "I'm not a monster." The whispers went quiet for the first time in days. And then, so faint, she almost didn't hear them. "You already are." Claire couldn't keep living like this. The hunger came faster now. 3 days, then 2, then barely 1 before the ache began again. She stopped answering calls, stopped going to work, stopped seeing anyone she knew. The thought of touching them was unbearable, not because she feared hurting them, but because she feared she wouldn't want to stop. She spent hours researching curses, talismans, anything that matched her necklace's description. Most articles were nonsense, but buried deep in an occult forum was a post from 10 years ago. The stone that eats once bound to a life. It will never release willingly. It feeds through touch, stealing the years of another to give to its keeper. The longer it is worn, the more it merges with the soul. Removal is possible only through willing transfer. Destruction with fire, blessed by the dying breath of its owner. Claire read the last line 3 times. Blessed by the dying breath, that meant Margaret could have destroyed it. If she'd wanted to. She slammed the laptop shut. Of course, Margaret hadn't destroyed it. She'd passed it on. That night, Claire tried to remove the necklace. She stood in front of the mirror, fingers clawing at the clasp, but it wouldn't budge. The metal seemed fused to her skin, the chain unyielding. The pendant burned hotter and hotter until her fingertips blistered. The whispers lashed at her, sharp and furious. "Ungrateful, you would cast me away after I have made you perfect." She gritted her teeth. "You're killing me. You're killing everyone. Around me, I am saving you. Without me, you are nothing but dust." She grabbed the pendant and yanked. Pain ripped through her chest like a lightning strike. Her knees buckled, vision dimming. And for a moment, she thought she felt something tearing not the chain, but something inside her. The stone's glow flared bright crimson, and in the mirror, she saw the face again, the elegant woman with the cold smile. But this time, the woman's lips moved. "You belong to me now." Claire didn't sleep. She sat on the floor until sunrise, the mirror still turned toward her. The woman inside it no longer flickered in and out. She was always there now, watching, her lips curled in that patient, knowing smile. The whispers had gone quiet, but the silence was worse. It felt like waiting. By midday, Claire made her decision. If the necklace could only be destroyed by the dying breath of its owner, she would be that owner. She'd rather take herself with it than pass the curse to someone else. She packed a single bag matches, lighter fluid, and the small wooden box where she'd once kept the necklace before it claimed her. She drove out of the city, past the suburbs, until the skyline was just a hazy memory in the forest beyond the highway. She found a clearing. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, the world quiet except for the occasional bird call. She poured the lighter fluid into a tight circle on the ground, the box in her bag in the center. Her hands shook as she held the match. The whispers returned, not as gentle persuasion, but as a roar inside her skull. Think, Claire. You are immortal. You can see centuries. You can have anything, be anything. She lit the match. The flame danced, tiny but defiant. Put it out, and I will make you more powerful than you've ever dreamed. Drop it, and you will fade into nothing. She held the match. Over the fluid, tears streaming down her face. I'm done, she whispered. The flame touched the ground. In an instant, fire raced around her, heat licking her skin. The pendant seared against her chest, the pain tearing a scream from her throat. She smelled burning metal, and with it, something deeper, like scorched air. A dying breath, not her own. The woman in the mirror appeared again, but now her face twisted in rage. She reached toward Claire as if from behind glass, her voice a shriek. You fooled. The chain snapped. The pendant fell into the flames, the crimson glow pulsing wildly before shattering with a sound like breaking bone. Claire collapsed. The whispers gone, the weight gone, and for the first time in months, she felt empty. But it was her emptiness. Fire burned until nothing remained but a blackened circle of ash and a faint metallic scent drifting on the wind. Claire sat in the clearing for a long time, her knees drawn to her chest, listening to the forest breathe. The silence was strange, too clean. No whispers, no pulsing warmth, no hunger gnawing at her ribs. Just the distant rustle of leaves. She expected relief to flood her. Instead, there was only exhaustion. Every stolen year, every false moment of perfection was gone now, and in its place the weight of her real age, her real body. She felt every ache, every scar, every sleepless night catch up to her all at once. She smiled bitterly. So this is what living feels like. Back in the city, she avoided mirrors for days. She didn't want to see the changes, the dimmed eyes, the return of the faint line across her chin, the hair that no longer gleamed unnaturally. She didn't regret her choice, but she didn't want to look back either. One evening, while unpacking groceries, she caught movement in the corner of her vision. Her hallway mirror. She froze. It was just her reflection, standing as she was until it blinked out of sync. Her heart stopped. Slowly, the reflection's lips curled into that same elegant smile she thought she had burned to ash, and then so faint she almost didn't hear it. Miss me. The lights flickered. The necklace is gone, or so Claire believes. But in the shadows, in the glass, something still watches. A faint smile, a whisper in the dark. A promise that eternity never truly lets go. Tell me, if you held the power to never die, would you give it up? Thank you for watching, and remember, some gifts are never meant to be worn. Good night, sleep well.